Hello and welcome to another edition of Josh Wants to Talk About Movies. I'm feeling incredibly out of shape. I mean, I want to go to the gym, but do I want to risk it? I mean, at-home exercises are great, but it's hard to get into that kind of mindset. So, when you think about the actress Charlize Theron, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Academy Award winner, action hero, or my personal favorite, Mr. F. But she has taken her talents in starring in a new Netflix film called The Old Guard. So The Old Guard is directed by Gina Prince-Bythewood, starring Charlize Theron, Kiki Layne, Chiwetel Ejiofor, and Harry Melling, and it follows 4 immortal mercenaries as they discover a new member, all the while they are being tracked down by powerful enemies. So the biggest props I can give to this film is that the action is fantastic. It's like a mixture of John Wick and Jason Bourne. It's very gritty, but it's also very elaborate and very fun to watch. You can really tell in the stunt coordination how they really try to have all their main characters fight like they have centuries of knowledge and skill in hand-to-hand combat. So if you just want to watch something for just plain action, I would definitely recommend this movie, although I will mention that the action sequences are few and far between. There's a couple in the beginning, one in the middle, and then one in the big climax. And the characters, I think, are a real major plus. It's real easy, I think, to just make 4 mercenary characters, have them have some small basic trait, and then just have them maybe just kill a whole bunch of people and then end the movie there. What I really like about this movie is that it kind of dives deeper into the aspect of what it would be like to be immortal, how you would utilize it, and how you might change during that process. You lose a lot of loved ones in your life because so many people come and go, and as that keeps happening in your life, I would assume you become more and more desensitized to it, which is what happens to Charlize Theron and one of her other mercenary friends. Essentially, what we can tell with Andy and some of the other people around her is that they lost a lot of their humanity. And so we can tell by this point in the story that Andy and a couple of the other mercenaries are realizing that they're struggling to find a reason to keep going because nothing is changing. So that makes the dynamic even more interesting when Niall gets introduced to the group and Charlize Theron has to struggle with the idea of wanting to teach her or to walk away. They also do a lot of good backstory with Andy in terms of what she's had to deal with and who she's lost over time and how that changes her outlook on life because she's lost a lot of close people to her, and she's also seen the harsh realities of what people like her, the immortal ones, can face. And so it makes me root for her a lot more. So when you think about a movie following immortal characters, you think that there aren't a lot of stakes involved because essentially the characters have nothing to lose because they can't die. But I think the movie handles that conflict in a very well thought out way. So by the middle of the film, we are introduced to a new story detail that I think really changes how the movie goes from that point on, and I think it really changes it for the better because it adds a lot more stakes and there's a lot more danger involved. And I think that was a smart move to play, especially if you wanted me to be invested in the main characters. The movie does have sort of a villain problem because there are essentially 2 villains-ish, and I'll get to that. Chiwetel Ejiofor shows up in the beginning of the film and he double crosses them, and he kind of becomes the face for villainy for a good portion of the movie, and then it switches over to
want to be friends with
Harry Melling. Why does that name seem so familiar? Oh my god, it's Dudley Dursley. Never mind. Whoever casted him as the villain, great job. I wanted him dead the minute I saw him. Golf claps all around. But all jokes aside, it does kind of throw me off when we are introduced primarily to this villain and then realize that he's not actually a villain, it's this other character. It's a little bit disorienting, but it didn't take me out of the movie that much. The only reason why I bring this up and why it's kind of a small problem for me is because Chiwetel Ejiofor eventually kind of turns into like an anti-hero or eventually becomes part of the group. And there's little bits of that sprinkled in throughout, but I didn't really think it was given a lot of characterization in depth, but I'll let it slide. You put Harry Melling's face as a villain, I'm gonna root for the heroes any day. Put a fucking axe through Dudley. Another thing that was kind of an issue for me was that the opening I hate to use this general word, but it was kind of boring. And the only reason why I bring this up is because I think it could have been awesome if you just edited around a couple of things or just kind of cut some things out. Because it starts off with Charlize Theron narrating, and she's already kind of like dead, and she kind of goes through this inner monologue of how long will this keep going, and then we kind of go into this transitional period of, oh, what happened before this event, and it's kind of just a lot of the characters walking around Morocco, kind of just talking, and they meet Chiwetel Ejiofor, and he gives them the thing, and he's like, all right, go do your thing. And they walk, and they kind of just walk to a place, and then they walk, and then the action starts. I think it would just more interesting if, to quote Philly D here, we just jump into it, because the action, again, is really nice, very precise, and very fun to watch. So I think just to start off a film, go with a bang. I don't need to know a reason why they're there. I'm just assuming it's either because they're bad guys there or they're saving some people. I can learn that on the mission. I don't need to give a full-blown detailed report on why they had to be there. Just to get me invested, I think that would have been a very nice way to start. But maybe that's how the comic started, but again, that's just my little critique. Again, this is kind of a nitpick for me, but I noticed there was a lot of shakiness with the camera. Now, camera shakiness is not bad. I've seen some movies with some really bad camera shaking with the action, and the camera movements during the action isn't at all terrible, but it's when the characters are just sitting and talking, or it's just mainly dialogue scenes. There's a lot of handheld camera, and that's not all bad. I understand that maybe sometimes on sets you have to be very quick with your shooting schedules, and it's a lot easier just to shoot with handheld than doing stationary. So handheld is easier to shoot, but there were just some scenes, for me at least, where the shakiness kind of became a distraction. One point specifically is when Charlize Theron is talking about one of her friends that died, and we go into a flashback, and the camera is on his face, but it's just shaking around so much, and I can't really get a good look at him. And the only times we're seeing his face is when the camera is just like super zoomed in, it's close up and it's shaking. I'm not sure, maybe it was like a last minute shoot, maybe they need some extra visuals, and so they had to quickly get a scene together. Whatever it was, the camera shakiness kind of threw me off. So in the end, the old guard actually kind of surprised me. I was heavily invested in the main two characters, and the action was very entertaining to watch. So if you stay to the very end, they do some sequel baiting and setting up a new antagonist, hopefully for the next story. And who they brought in for the antagonist I thought was a great choice, and I'm actually very interested in seeing a sequel to this film. The only thing that was a bit of a bother for me in this movie is that I think the production behind this was not given a big budget by Netflix, because they're very limited on their locations and where they could go, and like the number of action sequences that they were able to do. It very much tells me that they were limited what they could do budget-wise, and they tried to make the most of it. So I really hope that if Netflix does give this film a sequel, that it gives it a bigger budget, because I really want them to go crazy. So those were my thoughts on The Old Guard. Did you like the film, and would you be interested in seeing a sequel? Let me know. And as always, thank you for watching.